Congressman, thank you for being here today.
An honor to be here.
Congressman, you've been outspoken in your support of Ukraine, but you're from a district that has, in fact, very few Ukrainians. Why are you such an outspoken supporter of Ukraine?
Well, the Ukrainian people are not only fighting for themselves, Ukraine is fighting for the free world. The greatest threat to democracy and freedom, to the values that we cherish, is the axis of evil that includes the likes of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. And so we have an obligation to stand with Ukrainians who are fighting for freedom, who are fighting for the free world. And if the United States were to turn a blind eye, were to stand by passively and allow Ukraine to be railroaded by Russia, that to me would be the death of American leadership in the world. That would be the end of the rules-based liberal democratic order that has served the world well since the end of World War II.
That's good, Congressman. But in your own party, in fact, there's a lot of people who just simply don't support Ukraine. They don't agree with you. In fact, they would probably say that you're wrong. What would you say to such people, such even Democrats, who think that your position on Ukraine is wrong? How would you convince them?
I perceive the political dynamics differently. There are deep divisions within the Democratic Party, but on the subject of Ukraine, there's been remarkable unanimity. Just about every Democrat has voted to provide Ukraine with the aid it needs. And so there's far more support for Ukraine, whereas there are issues like Israel that are much more divisive within the Democratic Party. The greatest challenge to aid to Ukraine comes not from the Democratic Party, but from the Republican Party. I've been alarmed by the positions that Donald Trump has taken to the benefit of Russia and to the detriment of Ukraine. And so much of the Republican Party has a distorted view of Ukraine's war of self-defense.
Putin has been very clear in his objectives. He wants to dominate Ukraine. But so far, the White House has showed one weakness after another. It has moved the red line further and further along and said that ATACMS were not possible, F-16s were not possible, HIMARS were not possible, a lot of things were not possible. But now even we allow American weapons to be used to strike within Russia. What more do you think should be done to help Ukraine win?
Ukraine must win, not only for the sake of Ukraine, but for the sake of American leadership in the world. If Russia manages to annex Ukraine, then adversaries like China are going to feel more emboldened to invade Taiwan or to show aggression toward the Philippines and the South China Sea. Like a defeat in Ukraine will not stay in Ukraine. It will have global ramifications for the international order. So the highest priority should be to ensure that Ukraine wins. And we have to stop micromanaging Ukraine. We have to ensure that it has the resources and the flexibility that it needs to win the war, because defeat is not an option.
Congressman, you've been a great supporter of Ukraine, but you voted against cluster munitions for Ukraine. Looking back at that vote, do you agree with that? Do you think that was the right decision?
It's a tough issue because on one hand, the cluster munitions are desperately needed. At the same time, as you know, these cluster munitions leave behind a legacy that has maimed children. We've seen the destructive legacy of the cluster munitions in the Vietnam War, and so I saw that as a particularly complicated issue. But when it comes to giving Ukraine the freedom to strike it deep inside Russia, I feel like we in the United States should give Ukraine the same flexibility that Britain has given Ukraine and France has given Ukraine. There's no reason for the United States to be an outlier.
Congressman, let me ask you. You've been in Congress for a while. You get what's going on there. You see what's happening. Do you think that Congress will pass more aid for Ukraine in 2025?
Look, it depends on who's in power, right? It depends on who's president. It depends on who's in control of both the House and the Senate. If Democrats are in control of the political branches of government, then I am supremely optimistic that Ukraine will have the resources it needs to win the war. But if Donald Trump is president, or if the Republicans are in control of Congress, then it's going to be a question mark. I mean, that is my blunt political assessment. The Republican Party has been fundamentally unhelpful to the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom.
Congressman, that's great. Let me ask you one last question. If you had one message for Ukrainians, what is it? What would you like the nation of Ukraine to know that you've said?
You are not alone. The majority of Americans stand with you. The majority of members of Congress stand with you. We have a moral obligation to help the freedom fighters in Ukraine, and we will, and we should, and we will. I'm hopeful.
Congressman, I greatly appreciate your time today.
Of course, always a pleasure.